Okay, so I think I'll get started, and we'll have an introduction. Meaghan will present, and we'll have some time at the end for conversation and discussion. So on behalf of the Conference Planning Committee, so I'm a member of OHASTA. My name is Sara Faulkner, and I'm a teacher in Ontario. And working with the Association of Canadian Studies and our other partners in other provinces, I am pleased to introduce Meaghan Dalby. And Meaghan is a learning specialist at the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau, Quebec. The museum stands on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. As a learning specialist, she and her team are responsible for creating educational programming for both public and school-based audiences at the museum. Over the last 3.5 years, she's been focusing on the development and creation of the Teacher Zone, an online educational resource for Canadian teachers. So welcome, Meaghan, and I will pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And welcome, everyone. I am excited to spend the next 45 minutes with you talking about this project I've been working on and how you can use the Teacher Zone in your classroom. So like Sara said, I'm very grateful to be presenting from the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin. And I thought to kind of kick things off, if you're comfortable in the chat, if you wouldn't mind telling me whereabouts you're from and what grades you teach, and then I can kind of have a sense of who's in the audience, and I can focus on things that might be more pertinent to you. So if you feel comfortable sharing that, please do. Great, yeah, because it's really nice to have this sort of multi-province conference where we get to see more than just Ontario teachers or just Quebec teachers. So it's really great to see such a range. Awesome. Lots flooding in. So from Edmonton, Winnipeg. Great. Wonderful. Okay, so I'll keep my half an eye on the chat while I'm doing that, and we'll get going. So the Teacher Zone, like Sara introduced, is the main project that I've been working on at the museum for the last few years. And so what is it? It is an online educational resource that provides access to high quality museum content, such as primary sources that include museum artifacts, archival documents, video content, and we offer engagement ideas for your classroom. So activity suggestions about how you can use all of this really great stuff in your class. And who is it for? Well, it is for you folks. So the main audience are for teachers from grades 3 to 12, teaching Canadian history or social studies in their class. And so the way that it's set up definitely is a resource for teachers to use as a way to prepare for classes or to potentially send their students to. So our primary audience is for you folks. Secondary audience is for students. But that was one of the things that we really wanted to figure out was we can't make a website that does all things for everyone. We wanted to make sure that it was, we had our audience sort of nailed down. We developed this, it took us about 2.5 years of research and development to make this site, and it launched in May of 2020. So we did a lot of our research and development in a pre-COVID world with the idea that you would use this resource in preparation for in-classroom learning mostly. And then of course, in March of 2020, everyone was teaching from home. So this website has transitioned a little bit as well to potentially help out for teachers that are teaching online courses or need extra resources to send their students to keep them learning in an online environment. Like I said, we researched and developed for 2.5 years and then launched in May of 2020. A big part of our research was gathering together an advisory group of teachers from across the country. So it's one of the things I'm most proud of is this group of teachers that came together during the 2 years of development. We had a teacher representative from every province and territory come to the museum and basically help us build this website from scratch, which is really wonderful. So it really has been every step of the way. We've created this resource with teachers in mind and with feedback from teachers, making sure that the product we create is actually useful, because there's nothing worse than having something that just doesn't work for you and your reality. The new content is added annually. So, I mean, after I kind of get through this introduction, I'll be giving you a tour of the site and showing you exactly how you can use it in your class. New content is continuously being added. So every time you come back to the site, hopefully there'll be something new for you to explore, more topics, more primary sources being added. One of the things that there were lots of amazing things we learned from our teacher advisory group, but one of those things was that, you know, it is really important to be including primary sources in your teaching, but there's just sometimes it can be absolutely overwhelming with just the amount of stuff that's out there. I mean, the Canadian Museum of History has, I think, 1.5 million, if not 2 million objects digitized. So sure, you can go to our online collection and you can find primary sources, no problem, but knowing which primary sources are relevant to you, why they're interesting to your students, and how to use them in the class, it takes a lot of time and effort. So we kind of wanted to cut out the middleman, as it were, and present you with a shortened list of really awesome primary sources that the museum houses, tell you exactly why you would want to use them, and then give you suggestions about how to use them in your class, just to save you the time, because it's, I know your time is valuable, and you don't have a lot of it. So that is why it was created, was to help make your lives hopefully a little bit easier as you prep for some of these courses. Other key things we learned from our teacher advisory group was that, you know, teachers are looking for stories that have been underrepresented. So those topics are things that we try to focus on, making connections that are relevant to their students. So, you know, those interesting, maybe lesser known stories about particular primary sources or objects that keep kids engaged in history. So those things we focused on as well as keeping, you know, it's an interesting challenge to try and create a national product that appeals to teachers across the country, but also is relevant to them at a local level. So making sure that we have this geographic representation was also something that we wanted to make sure we included. And so we, again, wanted to try and create this, this source that you could come, if you know if you're teaching about New France, for example, you know, you can come to the Teacher Zone and find some really awesome primary sources that have been basically hand selected for you. So hopefully that is what you'll find when we explore the Teacher Zone. Okay, so I will take us there now. So I just have to share my screen again. Okay, great. So this is the Teacher Zone. So if you want to follow along on your own, it's historymuseum.ca/teachers-zone. And this is the basic site here. So on our landing page, it just sort of tells you a little bit about the site itself, but then you can also search. So let's say that you are, you have your lesson plan completely figured out, but you need to add in a couple of primary sources. You can search by keyword here, and it'll pull up things that are relevant to you. If you want to explore by theme, you can absolutely, and we'll talk a little bit more about how these themes are chosen in a second. If you know that you just are looking for video content, you can select that, and you can look at just video content. If you're looking for objects specifically from the West Coast or the East Coast, or a specific geographical location, you can do it that way, and time period as well. So there's lots of different ways to filter through our content and find something that's relevant to you. The way that the site is set up is we have all of these wonderful objects, all of these primary sources, and they're grouped together in what we call packages. And so these are different themed packages that house all of our objects as a way to keep things organized. As you can see, we have 4 packages right now. And again, that's that idea that we're constantly adding more and more content as we go. So the site is about a year and a half old, and it takes about a year to create one of these packages, to develop the content and do the research and the proper consultation. So yeah, it's not an insignificant amount of work, but it's once we get going, it's really great. So I'm going to use one of our new packages, which just launched maybe a month ago, called Haida Arts and Technology, as sort of a sample of how the packages are organized. So each package, we have our landing page, and we start with an introduction about what the package is about, the things you need to know, any consultation process we did. So for example, for this package, we worked very closely with a number of Haida artists who helped us include the Haida language as well in this package, and helped us choose the artifacts, the objects to showcase. So that is all sort of in the introduction here. And then we get into more just sort of scaffolded organization. So if you're looking at specific art pieces you want to look at, you can choose, like I'm interested in textile weaving. My students are learning about West Coast textile weaving. So we're going to talk about that. And again, a little introduction about what textile weaving is and why it's important to you and your students. And then we get into the good stuff down here, which is the actual primary sources and the artifacts. So if we look at this Raven's Tail ceremonial robe as an example, each object page is set up the same way. So we start with a high resolution photograph, and my apologies, my internet is a little bit slow. There we go. So we start with a high res image of an object that you can download if you want. You can zoom in to look at the details. You can look really closely. This particular object, you can see the front and the back. So there's a couple objects to explore. And there's also some video content from the artist herself, talking about her process. So I won't play that for you. You feel free to explore on your own. So we've got sort of this is the primary source. Here it is. And you can use that. You can use this in your classroom. So again, the idea being, if you have a smartboard, you could throw this up on your smartboard. If you want to download it and print it off, you absolutely can. We try to make everything as accessible as possible. I will say as well, for folks that perhaps have internet connectivity issues in their class or don't want to rely on screens, we also offer free USBs that we'll send to you with all of the material found on here. So if you say, yes, I really want to teach Haida Arts and Technologies in my class, but I don't want to rely on my computer, we'll send you a USB that has all of the photos, all of the video, all of the text, and that's free of charge. So you can do that as well. Moving into how to actually use some of these things in your class. So the next thing you'll see as you scroll down are these object activities. And again, this was recommended from our teacher advisory to have some historical thinking and inquiry-based options right at the beginning, before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the historical context of this object, let's get our students' brains thinking about what this object is, why it's important. So in this case, we have two activities. We have a look activity, which is more focused on observational skills. So some of our VTS, our visual thinking strategies, just sort of getting the brain warmed up. And then think activities are a little more critical thinking, thinking about, critical thinking about this subject. And so each section of these activities are designed specifically for this object, and they're meant to be suggestions. So we recognize that no one knows your students better than you do. So these are just little ideas of little nuggets that you can kind of throw out to your students. You can scale it up, you can scale it down depending on the grade level or the language level as well. So these are our object activities, and again, they're grounded in historical thinking concepts and inquiry-based learning. So as you explore the website, you'll see lots of different examples. The detail section includes all of the sort of, quote unquote basics of each primary source that you're going to want to know, where it's from, where it's currently housed, what it's made out of, when it was made, and of course the artist who made it. If you click on this link here, that'll take you to Google Maps, so you can see exactly where on the West Coast this object is from, as in greatest detail that we at the museum know. So in this case, it's Masset in Haida. And the last section of our object page is the historical context. This is something that I think sets this website apart from a lot of other resources that we have. We have 3 different levels of text. So the summary level is meant for younger students or for people in a hurry who just need to, what are the key things I need to know about this object? They're in bullet points. Try to keep it to 3 bullets. Here, obviously, I added 4, so I thought it was really important. And then if you move into the essentials text, it's for students in, I'd say, middle school, the middle grades, grades 6 to 9, sort of in terms of language and the type of content that, or the type of sentence structure that they're going to see. So just a little bit, a little bit more meat, a little bit more detail. And then the in-depth section is basically everything we know about this object. It's for your senior students or for people that have a lot of time, and it gives you a lot more context. The language will be a little bit more complex as well. So I really like having these options because not only does it help with accessibility if students are using this site, but second language learners can also, if they're having trouble at, say, the essential level, they could drop down to the summary level. That might help them out. As well as, being respectful of not everyone has time to read this much text. So having these options available was something that was really important to us. But it's another reason why the development process takes so long. So each object page looks the exact same, or is set up the same. So if we were to go to Bentwood boxes, for example, it's set up the same way. So you'd have the picture that you can explore in depth, the activity suggestions, the detail section, and then the historical context. And so one last little wisdom nugget that we got from our teacher advisory group was that, these activity options are really great for teachers that are well established in teaching social studies or have been doing it for a few years, that have their lesson plans sort of already figured out. And they just want to include these resources or these primary sources in their existing lesson plans. But there are some teachers who are new or new to social studies who might not have lesson plans or bigger ideas of how to teach these subjects. So for those folks, we created package activities. So if you click on this activities button down here. These package activities are more structured like your traditional lesson plans. So they look at multiple objects found within the package. They probably would take you about maybe 1 to 2 lessons depending on the activity, whereas the object suggestions would probably take 15 minutes, half an hour, not even, depending on your students. So these are more lesson plan in style, and like I said, they use multiple objects found within a package. And again, these are just suggestions about how to use this. Use these primary sources in your class. No one knows your students better than you, so they're not set in stone. They're meant to be just suggestions that you can kind of take and run with. That's great. So right, I will go back to my PowerPoint now. Great, so that's the basic structure of the website. Very quickly before, I'd like to do a little practice run with you so you can kind of get a sense of some of the activities. But I'll talk about quickly how the packages are chosen and how they're developed very quickly. So they're based on what we are experts in at the Canadian Museum of History. So the collections that we have, the curators that we have on staff that will help us create these packages. So that's one thing we have to keep in mind. Of course, the curriculum connections. So the objects that the packages we create, we want to make sure that they connect to what you're teaching in some way. And again, it's been a challenge to make sure to create a national product that works for all the different provinces' curricula, but it's been a good one. And I think that on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about how we've approached that. We've got gaps in current online offerings. So what are things that, there are lots of resources out there already. We probably wouldn't try and create a package on it. We do want to try and look at underrepresented voices and perspectives, and we're definitely focusing on that in some of our upcoming packages, and as well as the geographic representation, which I talked about earlier. So curriculum themes, like I said, it's been a bit of a challenge to try and appeal to everyone, because everyone teaches, there is a lot of crossover, but there's things that are different across each curricula. So we did a survey of the social studies and history curricula across the country, and picked out the commonalities and the common themes. So then all of our packages then have to hit 3 or 4 of these common themes to be considered to be created. And so these are the common themes that we found. And you'll remember in our drop-down box at the very beginning on our search page, these are the themes that are available. So these themes, even if they're not, the wording isn't exactly the same as what's in your curriculum documents, these should be familiar to you. And so we try and hit these as frequently as we can. They're kind of our guiding stars in terms of making sure that the content we're creating is relevant for you. Okay, so I thought we could try out one of the activities. So this photograph is a primary source, obviously, from one of our packages. It is a picture titled Almost Complete Aircraft at the Can Car Factory. The photographer is unknown. It was taken between 1939 and, oh, that's a typo, 1945, not 1345. And so I think I'd like to be able to zoom in. So I think I'll go back to the teacher zone itself, and we'll look at it together and do one of the activities. Okay. All right, so here we go. Here is our photograph, and I'll just zoom in. The first activity we're going to do is a virtual thinking strategies activity. So we're going to be looking closely at the photograph. I'll zoom in really close, and then we'll see, what do you see in the photograph? What do you think is happening in the photograph? And then what questions do you have about the photograph? What do you wonder about the photograph? So I will make sure that I can see the chat. Or if you feel comfortable, shouting out some of the answers, the things you see, that would be great too. I think we've got quite a few participants, 66 participants. So, and I won't be able to see if you put your hand up. So either use the chat to talk about what you see in the photograph, or feel free to if you can, put your mic on and talk about some of the things that you can see. So we'll zoom in. The wonderful thing about this site too is because we use high res images, we can zoom in quite closely. So I'll just go slow as we look at this photograph. Right, so people in suits posing are observers, workers continuing their work. That's great, thank you, Carson. Propellers, I think these are planes. I wonder if the planes will be used for World War II. That's great. Thank you, Angela. I see hinged wings, so I'm assuming these are destined for aircraft carrier hangars. So that's great. So I see hinged wings, and I think that they're destined for aircraft carrier hangars. Wonderful. Okay, a little more directed questions from me too is, do you think that, this picture is representative of what a typical factory might look like? Or do you think that this is perhaps a staged photograph? Yes, good question. Who are the workers and observers, race and social status? So yeah, that's really great. Those are really great. I wonder who these people are, what they're doing. I only see male workers, and I wonder if they were exempted from military duty. This seems very staged to me, especially how the workers in the suits are positioned. Yeah, so I also wonder about these guys here, these guys in suits. Like, I can't imagine that they'd be doing too much work on the aircraft carriers. So who are they? Why are they there? Yeah, great I wonder questions. Okay. So, and again, we're doing this observation, this look activity as kind of a warm up before you get to read the historical context. So lots of questions, not a lot of answers, which is what you want at the beginning. All right. So the next question we'll look at too is, in this photograph, can you find the group of women? Was it easy to find them? So I'll blow this picture back up. We'll take another look and see if you can tell me where the group of women are. Okay, again, we'll zoom in. I do know where they are, so I am kind of helping you out. Oh, that's okay, no worries. So keep on zooming in. Yeah, so we can find that there is a small group of women here behind the plane. And so one of the sort of supplementary questions to that, to our look question was, what do you think the positioning of these women, having them sort of at the back, behind the scenes, what does that tell the viewer about about their importance. Why might they be positioned at the back? And then one of the interesting things about this photograph too is once you get a chance to read the historical significance, you find out that in this factory, women were actually the ones, there was 50, they were took up 50% of the workforce. So they were working on these planes just as much as the men were. But in this very staged photograph, that is not what is being presented. What's being presented is that there's groups of men working on the planes and the women are sort of there, but at the back. So then that can lead to discussions about propaganda, questioning the media, asking why things are presented a certain way. So there's lots of jumping off points from this singular photograph. Okay, so take us back here. So that was our second activity. Were they easy to find? And then what message do you think their placement sends to the viewer? We won't go through all of these activities. I think you can kind of get the idea of how the activities, you can use them as icebreakers in your class, or again, just little like suggestions to get the brain warmed up. There are 3 different types of activities that we suggest. So look, think, and then do. So, and like I mentioned, the look is just to get you observing and looking. Think is more critical thinking, where you bring in some of the knowledge that you might read in the historical context at the bottom. And then do activities are for our kinesthetic learners, myself included, about applying some of the stuff you might, the skills you might have learned. Not every object has a look, a think, and a do, sort of depends on the object and what's appropriate. But in this case, I thought a nice actionable activity would be to take a photograph of your class and explain the decisions that you made while taking the photograph, about placement of people, about the lighting, etc. Okay, so and does anyone have any other questions they want to throw into the chat about how these activities work or how they might be used?
Meaghan, there was a question earlier in the chat about being able to hide somehow the answers, or just so that it, I guess, pushed learning a little bit further before the answers were given.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And unfortunately, just the way that the website is set up right now, we don't have the option to do that. In our earlier, I think I did see that question kind of go by. So thanks for bringing it back to my attention. I think the example was from the Women of New France package, which was one of the very first packages we created. So in our later packages, we haven't included the answers. We've included tips instead for that exact purpose, because right now the website doesn't have the capability to hide answers. And then for anything that is, where we're asking for very specific questions, where there is sort of a, quote unquote, right or a wrong answer, you should be able to find the answer in the historical context. Otherwise, a lot of the questions we tried to keep them more open-ended, more discussion-based, so that there isn't necessarily a right or a wrong. It's more just about getting students to have that conversation, to start thinking along those lines. So yeah, it's a good question, and hopefully we'll be able to do some upgrades to the website, and that would be something that would be really awesome, to have the hiding of the answers for sure. So yeah, thank you. It's a great question. Okay, I'm going to jump back to my PowerPoint again, finish up, and then I think we'll have the rest of the time for questions. Okay. Okay, so some of our upcoming packages, which I'm really excited about, that hopefully will launch in the next year or so, are Lost Liberties, which is focuses on 3 times that the War Measures Act was enacted in Canada. Definitely a more senior level package. It's based on an exhibition that's being developed at the Museum of History right now, but it is going to be really relevant in talking about the curtailing of civil liberties for the quote unquote, greater good, and when that's appropriate, where's the line, when is it appropriate, when is it not, and there's lots of really great connections to what we're experiencing now with COVID. So I'm really excited about the Lost Liberties package, and that should be coming out later in the fall. A legacy of residential schools is a big one that we have been working on since before the website launched. So I think we're 2.5 years in development of this one. Obviously a really important subject that requires a lot of care and consultation as we create this package. So we're looking at early 2022 for that package to launch. And again, including lots of primary sources, but also own voices, so interviews and recordings with survivors who are comfortable sharing their experiences. So this will be a really important one. African Nova Scotians and the 20th century Canadian legacies. Fall of 2022, I believe, is the plan. And that one focuses on more the East Coast, obviously, and the legacies of some really wonderful Black Canadian stories. Again, we're hinging this package on the things that we have in our collection. So we recently acquired the theater seats that Viola Desmond, from the theater that Viola Desmond was taken from, or arrested at rather. And then we have an oral history with her sister, Wanda Robson. So that sort of started this package, as we had some really strong primary sources to work with. Disability history and accessibility rights is also in development. So that will be coming out in the next year as well. And then one that's not on the list, but we've just started working on, is on the experiences of LGBTQ2S+ Canadians as well. So these are all things you can look forward to. So keep checking back the website as we continue to add these packages. I focused obviously I focused a lot on the Teacher Zone because that is what I am most familiar with and what has been my life for the last 3 years or so. But we also have some really awesome online learning products at the museum that are coming out and are new. So we have virtual school programs, which you can sign up for now. And there are three options. One is a gimbal tour, so you can see one of our program interpreters will take you around the museum using a camera, so it's like you're at the museum. Another school program is one based on Confederation, and then the last school program is based on the histories of Indigenous folks on the Northwest Coast. So you can read all about those school programs and sign up for them if you like at this website here. And then the History Box educational kit is a new product that we're working on that should be ready to launch in the new year. So if you've might be familiar with the War Museum, has their supply line traveling kit where you get a box full of museum artifacts, and it's sent directly to your classroom and you get it for 2 weeks. So we created our own version of that, which we're really excited about. And you'll be able to start registering for that in November. And again, sort of a shameless plug, we're just really excited about, we partnered with some Indigenous artists to create some of the Indigenous artifacts in the box. So we're very excited to have them lend their skills, and then they've offered in some cases to do interviews with us. So we have like their voices about how they actually create these objects and why they're important to their community and culture. So it's really exciting. Okay. If you don't want to miss out on anything, sign up for our Teachers Club. And questions. Okay. Sorry, I realize we don't have that much time left. It's like we
have about 5 minutes for questions. So feel free to unmute or type your question into the chat. Thanks.
Yes. And I'll just put up, if you want to email me later, if you have a question, please feel free. And then here's some of the links that I mentioned earlier. But thank you all. Oh. Right. Well, thanks, Carson. I'm glad that you are excited about these materials, as I am too. It has been a real pleasure getting all of these materials together for you, and it's nice to see teachers use them. And again, this website's only going to get better and better as we continue to add more content. So. I'm also happy I kind of glossed over the sort of development process of how we create the packages. So I'm happy to talk about that too, if folks have questions about that, or great. Yeah, some of the resources from the FIDOA are really wonderful. You're lucky to have some really great documents. It was something else I didn't explicitly touch on, but there's we tried to make the website as accessible as possible. So there's transcripts and transcriptions, and everything is bilingual. Oh yes, sorting content by location, so you can see objects specific to the region. Absolutely. So on that front page that we talked about, you know what? I'll just show you. Right. So if you go to the home page, you should be able to sort by object origin. So if you are in Ontario, or if you're in Alberta, you can, or sorry, prairies over here, then you can see the packages that have objects from the prairies, and then all of the objects themselves, if you keep scrolling down, that originate from that specific location. Hopefully that answers that question. Yes, I assume that the links to the resources will be made available after the conference. Sarah, I think you said that my PowerPoint will be available to everyone.
Mm-hmm. We are planning on housing all of the resources, I think, on the SANC website after. There'll be links at the OHASTA website. And I think we're also putting together a YouTube channel. So videos will be available as well for all the sessions.
Great. Hope to connect with local history sources. I really appreciate it. Is there a possibility to include a framework that the History Museum uses for teachers to use with their own resources? Perhaps even an email to share their own resources packages with others. Yeah, so that this idea of collaboration and individualization was something that we really grappled with during the development process of developing the site. So it was something that we considered having an option for teachers to be able to sign in and like create their own package. But unfortunately, it was sort of beyond the scope of what we were able to do for this project. It would be really lovely to have a group hub where we could share ideas, teacher to teacher. I don't know that the museum has the capabilities, unfortunately, to facilitate something like that. That being said, please feel free to send any suggestions or ideas or ways that you use this, the site to apprentissage.learning@History Museum, and I'll put that website back up now, because then we can share it through any ideas. If you give us consent, we can share these ideas about how to use some of the sources on social media or through our teachers club as well. So I think that that might be a way to kind of do what you're suggesting here. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah, more collaboration between teachers across the province would be amazing.
Okay, so we have about a minute left. So I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Meaghan for sharing these absolutely amazing resources. I think we all appreciate the amount of effort that goes into curating these types of sources, and we're always looking for new ones because it saves us time, and there's such a rich collection to work with. So thank you so much for sharing. And I just want to remind people that over the next half an hour that our exhibitors hall will be open. It's quite interactive this year, so you can go and talk to people from the National Film Board, Canada's History, among others. And also that we've got teachers who have created videos that you can go and watch. They'll be shared after as well, but if you have a few minutes, I would highly recommend going to hear some of these short videos from award-winning teachers. So thank you very much, Meaghan, and thanks to everybody for participating, and we'll see you in the next sessions.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to share all of this with you. So hopefully you'll find it useful. And enjoy the rest of your day. It's going to be a great one.
Thanks, everyone.